Section 5.1a is about finding slope. It's a very important concept when dealing with lines, which is what Chapter 5 is all about. The slope of a line is a number that's used to describe how steep a line is. And here you see there are 4 different types of lines we want to look at and some classifications for what the slopes could be. If you have a line like this blue one that slants up and to the right, we say that that line has a positive slope. Any line that slants up and to the right has a positive number for slope. Likewise, any number that slants down and to the right, we say has a negative slope. So if you see any line that goes that direction, you know the slope will be a negative number. Now these are 2 special kinds of lines. They're horizontal and a vertical. A horizontal line has a slope of 0. You can imagine if you're a skier and you're trying to ski on a horizontal line, you would not go anywhere. You would travel 0 distance. So that's how I remember a horizontal line has a slope of 0. Leaving us with a vertical line which has an undefined slope. You'll see why that's undefined a little bit later, but right now the way I remember it is if I try to ski on this line, when they find my body will be undefined, and therefore a vertical line has an undefined slope. Now you can find the slope of a line if you know any 2 points that are on the line, and we're going to show you how to do that in a couple different ways. Let's say we have a graph that shows 2 points, 1, 3, and 4, 5, that exist on this line. So you see the blue line has these 2 points on it. You can find slope because slope is described as the rise over the run. Now what is rise? Rise is just the change in the y coordinates. You could also say the movement either up or down. That's the rise. And then the run is the change in the x coordinate. That's the movement left or right. So if you look at this line and you start with the 2 points, to travel from this point down here, we would travel up 2, and that's what the blue arrow is showing, up 2, so a positive 2 to go up, and we would travel a movement to the right, or the run would be a movement to the right of 3 units, or a plus 3. So we say that the rise is a positive 2 and the run is a positive 3. And that's where we're going to get this the slope of 2/3 here. A rise of positive 2 and a run of positive 3. Now, upward movement is positive, downward movement would be negative, and then movement to the right is positive, and movement to the left is negative. So you use this idea of rise over run. Now the problem is you can only use that if you have a graph. So we've also developed a way to find slope if you're just given 2 points using an algebraic expression. Here's what that algebraic expression looks like. Now this key concept says a lot of information, but the really important part is right here. This is the formula. This is the formula for finding slope. M, which is a letter we use to describe slope, we call it M. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. In other words, that's the change in the y over the change in the x. And you can use this anytime you have 2 points. If you have 2 points, you can use this formula to find slope, and we're going to practice that a bunch here in the next couple examples. So here's our first example. Find the slope of the line that passes through this point, negative 3, 2, and this point, 5, 5. Now, because we happen to have a picture here, I just want to show you that we can also use rise over run. So to get from this point to this one here, I'm going to actually go up 3 units. So I'll have a rise of a positive 3. And then I'm going to go to the right. What is that? 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 units. So I'm going to have a run to the right of a positive 8. So we know, because we have a picture here, that the slope of this line is going to be 3/8. But we're also going to verify that by using the formula. Here's the formula for finding slope. So now what we have to do is we have to pick one of these points to be the y sub 2 and one of the y's to be the y sub 1. It turns out that it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the 5, 5. So I'm going to use the y value of a 5, and I'm going to subtract the y value of a 2 in the other point. Now here's where it gets important that you keep them in order. If I choose this 5 for my y sub 2, that means the other 5 has to be my x sub 2. And then I'm going to subtract the other x value, which is negative 3, from there. So let's do that. 5 minus 2 is 3. This is really a 5 minus a negative is a plus. So this is really 5 plus 3, which is an 8. So I end up with a slope of 3 over 8, which I already knew. Here's our next example of finding slope. Because I have a picture, I'm going to do the rise and the run first. My rise to go from this point on the left here to this one on the right will be a downward movement of 4. So we say that that's a negative 4 rise, and a right movement of a positive 1, so negative 4 over 1. So that's going to give me a slope of negative 4. We're going to verify that by now using our formula. Now I told you that it doesn't matter what order you put the points, but you have to stay consistent. So now I'm going to put the negative 4 as my y sub 2. I really have no reason to do that other than to show you that it can be done the opposite way. So here's my y sub 2, which means my other y value is my y sub 1. So minus negative 8. Now I have to stay consistent. If I did negative 4 minus negative 8, I better do negative 3 minus negative 2. Now just a reminder, minus a negative is the same as plus, so I'm going to rewrite this in case it helps some of you with that. Negative 4 plus 8 is 4, and negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. 4 over negative 1 is just a negative 4, so the slope is negative 4. Here we have to find the slope of a horizontal line, and we'll see why that's a special one. So we'll start by trying to find the rise. To go from this point to this point, we go up 0. We don't go anywhere, so the rise is 0. And in this case, the run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a positive 7. Well, since 0 over anything is just 0, we now know that the slope of this line is a slope of 0. Let's verify that using the formula. So it doesn't matter which y value I'll choose. They're both 4, so it'll be 4 minus 4. And then the x value, I'll do 4 minus negative 3, which is 4 plus 3. So we end up with 0 over 7, which again is a slope of 0. Now we had talked about this previously, that any horizontal line, any line that's completely horizontal, has a slope of 0. And we've just verified that by looking at a point on that line, and we still get the 0 slope. Here we want to find the slope of a vertical line. I'm not even going to do rise over run. We'll go right to the formula. So for the y's, I'll do 3 minus negative 4. So the y of 3, subtract the negative 4. And then that means I have to do negative 2 for the x minus negative 2. I'll rewrite them again for those of you that struggle with the minus. Minus and negative is the same as plus, but you have to add the additive inverse. And the negative 2 plus 2 is going to give me 7 over 0. Now it turns out that if you have a 0 on the top of a fraction, you end up with a 0 for the answer. But if you have a 0 on the bottom, we say that that's undefined. If you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get an error. And we knew this anyway because we said that all slopes of vertical lines are undefined. Here's a slightly different example using slope. This time we're given 2 points, but one of our x values is unknown. And we're also given that the slope is already a 1/2. So we're going to use the slope formula to find this unknown x value. So in the formula, I already know that the slope is 1/2. So instead of finding the m, I'm going to just plug in a 1/2 for the m. Now I have to subtract the two y values. I'm going to start with the second one. So 2 minus 3. And now because I did the 2 first, I have to use the r first for my x value and r minus 6. Now rewriting this, it's a negative 1 over r minus 6. Now this is called a proportion. Whenever you have two ratios that are equal to each other, it's a proportion. And if you remember how to solve proportions, you're going to cross multiply. So 1 times r minus 6 is 1 times parentheses r minus 6. And then 2 times negative 1 is a negative 2. Distributing the 1 here, we get r minus 6 equals negative 2. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So we end up with negative 2 plus 6, so r equals 4. Here's an example of using the slope formula when we're already given the slope, but we have an unknown x or y value, and we solve it using the cross product.